community knows how serious climate change is. In the city, in regional areas, in rural areas, people are forming groups. They're running, walking, campaigning for a safer climate. We're all campaigning for a safer climate. People are making changes in their lifestyles, in their homes, and in the way they run their businesses. So as people who have felt the brunt of climate change, we're asking our government to listen to us. Start taking climate change seriously. Treat it as a matter of life or death. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenica, and for sharing that incredibly powerful story and for having the strength to share that story. And today, to those communities affected, we stand united with you in your attempts to rebuild your homes and your lives, and we're acting to try and avoid a repeat of that terrible day. We're going to hear from another climate change hotspot now, from a speaker representing Make Poverty History, Leah Aveen from Tuvalu. Tuvalu is one of the Pacific nations fighting hardest in Copenhagen for a safe climate deal. And on all reports, they're really punching above their weight, bringing the conference to a standstill by demanding a safe climate deal. Thanks very much, Leah.
My name is Leah Aveen. I'm 24, I'm a mother of two, and I'm a Tuvaluan Australian. Today I'm talking on behalf of Make Poverty History. Climate change is happening. It's real. We don't have time to argue with skeptics. For while we waste time debating in our parliament and in our media, millions of the world's most vulnerable and poor people are being hit hard by its effects, despite being the least responsible. I know this. I was born in Tuvalu. It is a small nation of 9 low-lying atolls. At only 1 metre above sea level, we are feeling the effects of the rising tides and the changing weather patterns. Our food crops are being destroyed by salt water seeping up through the coral, and the king tides that wash across our small atolls are becoming more common and increasingly severe. This threatens our local food supply and our ability to live off the land. For us, continuing with business as usual means that within the next 10 to 20 years our land will become uninhabitable and our population of 12,000 people will be forced to relocate. This threatens our identity, our culture, and our very existence. We are not the only ones. All over the world, countries are being affected by climate change. And in poor countries where money and resources are scarce, it is difficult to adapt. It is estimated the number of people affected by climate-related disasters is likely to increase by 54% to 375 million people in the next 6 years. And while the poor suffer, rich countries like Australia do nothing for fear that it will, in reducing emissions, they will hinder economic growth. For Tuvalu, this is not a question of economics. It is a question of survival, of injustice, of human rights. This is life and death. In Australia, our government refuses to respond with the urgency and leadership required to halt climate change and turn this around. We need to commit to reducing our emissions by at least 40% below 1990 levels by 2020. We need to supply substantial funding and support affected countries in adapting to climate change and to develop a low-carbon pathway into a sustainable future. Copenhagen must deliver a fair, ambitious and legally binding climate deal to prevent catastrophic climate change and minimise the effects on poor countries. The Australian government is supposed to represent its people and we are not being represented. We need to send a strong message that we will not stand for this inaction any longer. There is hope for Tuvalu and for all nations affected, and it lies with us. Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." We can be that change. We must be that change. We can turn this around, but we need to act immediately and effectively. Please research the issues surrounding climate change and arm yourself with knowledge. Learn more about what is at stake and talk about it in your workplace, in your schools, in your community. Take direct action. Reduce your own emissions. Write to your local MP. Live local. Ride your bike. Grow your own food. Vote with your dollar. Consume less. Inspire others to do the same. There is hope. Look around you. Look at all of the people here today. And during today, introduce yourself to other people and thank each other for being here, because we have an enormous challenge ahead of us and we need to support each other to create the change necessary to secure a safe climate for us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. We'll be walking in 5 minutes, folks. But just one final speech from me. I just want to start with an update from Copenhagen. I had a call from a colleague who's there, and the main development overnight was that there's a split between nations, whether we get a legally binding commitment coming out of Copenhagen, those nations that want a legally binding deal, and those who don't. Tuvalu, among with 90 other nations, is leading the call for a legally binding split. And apparently our government, the Australian delegations, has been in the camp who has been arguing against a legally binding deal. Today, of course, is an International Day of Action. There's actions happening right around the world. Tonight at 8 p.m, Penny Wong is addressing the main conference in Copenhagen. Outside at the same time, there will be a massive climate protest. We're now going to send a message from Melbourne that will be projected on the big screen of the protest tonight in Copenhagen, and it'll be projected inside the conference venue by our colleagues at Get Up and Greenpeace, and they'll hear our voice all the way over in Copenhagen. And that message from all of us is climate treaty now, don't deserve Kyoto. Let's all do it as loud as we can. On the count of 3, climate treaty now, don't desert Kyoto. 1, 2, 3. Climate treaty now, don't desert Kyoto. Climate treaty now, don't desert Kyoto. Thank you very much, everyone. One of the main points of discussion in Copenhagen is how much rich nations like Australia invest in stopping the impacts of climate change and helping poor countries to adapt to climate change in the developing world. The proposal on the table at the moment is that wealthy countries establish a fund of $10 billion US per year for the next 3 years, maybe more. $10 billion. $10 billion to build seawalls to protect hundreds of millions of people in Bangladesh. $10 billion to relocate entire Pacific Island communities to higher ground. $10 billion to find alternative freshwater sources for the 1 billion people dependent on melting freshwater Himalayan glaciers who are running out. The Great Glaciers are disappearing fast. And $10 billion to deal with the exacerbated impacts of drought and famine in Africa. Quite frankly, that is a pathetic amount.